now transition to our second presentation, Creating Transformative Experiences, Leveraging Technology to Promote Student Engagement and Engage Scholarship. As a reminder, if you have technical difficulties, please post those in the chat and someone will message you. If you have questions for the presenter, please use the Q&A feature. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our session today. I'd like to begin with first thanking TLT for inviting me to participate in the summer series. I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful for the opportunity to have taught in a blue box experimental classroom at Althouse Laboratory this past semester, and I'll be teaching there as well in the fall semester. So grateful for that. Thank you very much. So in addition to being a faculty member at the School of Labor and Employment Relations, I serve in two other capacities here at the university that are particularly germane to our talk this morning. And that is, I am a scholar at the Student Engagement Network Faculty Academy for academic years 2019 through 2021. I also serve as a scholar in residence at the Center for the Performing Arts. And you'll see where those two roles come into play in our talk. My purpose today is to have a purposeful conversation with you about an approach to teaching and learning. And I want to apologize right up front. I'm having some challenges with allergies, so if I cough or take a drink of water, I ask for your understanding. It appears that Pennsylvania and Florida are very different, and so I'm having some allergic reactions down here. So thank you for that. These are the topics that I will be covering today. One of my passions in life is that I love the arts, and I'm very passionate about the performing arts. And so I've chosen to view our talk today from the lens of a three-act play. In the first act, I want to talk about creating transformative experiences, student engagement, engaged scholarship, and what's important about student engagement. In the second act, I want to talk about the world of work and technology and societal issues related to technology at a macro level. And then for Act 3, I will transition to talking about how I use technology to promote student engagement and engage scholarship in my Ethics in the Workplace class, which is my signature class. After every act, we're going to pause, bring you into the conversation. I'm going to ask Sarah if she could read off a couple of questions for us, or your observations or reactions, and I'll be happy to respond. I want to make this a two-way conversation. Context matters. Our conversation today is taking place as the world battles the COVID-19 pandemic and as we experience protests and demonstrations across the country and internationally after the death of George Floyd in police custody. My point is, our experiences and our background influences the lens by which we view and interpret reality. My perspective and approach to teaching and learning is influenced by my background and my experiences. So I want to share with you today a little bit about my story, my journey, to give you context for my talk. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in an inner city neighborhood by the name of the Hill District. I graduated from Point Park University, and at Point Park, I was introduced to several things that were transformative. One, the opportunity to interact with international students and international faculty for the first time in my life. And Point Park is well known for theater and dance. I graduated from Penn State University with 2 masters. Again, another transformative experience for me. I worked for a couple of departments in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but my 23 years at AT&T, another transformative experience. I had the opportunity to work in a variety of assignments for a Fortune 50 company. Assignments in sales, sales support, business development, marketing, and HR. My last assignment, I was Director of Strategic Talent Acquisition, Workforce Diversity, Equal Employment Opportunity, and Affirmative Action. I left AT&T and went to work for the University of Maryland Global Campus. UMGC is a pioneer in online education. I taught courses there, and I became Associate Provost and ran the Office of Faculty Affairs. I was recruited to come back to Penn State. I've been here for 11 years. I teach online and face-to-face in residence and online. And my signature class is Ethics in the Workplace, as I mentioned. One last transformative experience I want to share with you is that I graduated from the Georgetown University Institute of Transformational Leadership in 2017. I earned a certificate in executive leadership coaching, another key influence for me. So as a result of those experiences, I developed a lifelong passion for learning and discovery. I consider myself a champion of diversity, equity, inclusion, and civil discourse. I'm an ambassador for the arts and a patron of the arts, and a strong proponent of leveraging technology to promote student engagement and engaged scholarship. I view myself as a scholar practitioner, and my credo is to know is to do. To not do is to not know. Let's talk about transformative experiences. I view higher education as a vehicle to unlock human potential. My goal in the classroom is to create a transformative experience for students. Here's the question that drives everything I do in the classroom. What can I do to create a teaching and learning environment that helps students to be the best version of themselves? I want students to see themselves, their situation, others, and the world differently as a result of completing my course. To help with this, I'm guided by Mesereau's transformative dimensions of adult learning depicted on the slide. Student engagement. What is student engagement? There are a lot of definitions of student engagement. And the pictures you see on your screen is perhaps what student engagement would look like from a student life cycle management perspective, from the day they step on campus until the day they graduate. But given the different definitions of student engagement, here's the one that I love because of its power and simplicity. Student engagement inspires students to become psychologically involved, connected to, and passionate about learning. Psychologically involved, connected to, and passionate about learning. Student engagement and engaged scholarship is highlighted in the Penn State Strategic Plan, 2016-2025 plan. Let me lift up a passage from the strategic plan that's evidence of this. Penn State will advance the power of participation in the spirit of innovation by connecting undergraduate and graduate students with engagement experiences that produce resilience and empower them to make a positive impact as citizens and leaders of the world. We're committed to providing access to these engagement experiences to all students with a desire to engage, explore, grow beyond the classroom. As a scholar for the Student Engagement Network, I have the opportunity to work with people like Mike Zeman, the director of the Student Engagement Network, and to provide advice and coaching and input in terms of the kinds of experiences that we want our Penn State students to have while they are here with us. These are the types of experiences that we want our students to have. In terms of areas or competencies, areas that we'd like our students to grow in, these are the growth areas that we've identified and that we create programs and initiatives to help our students grow in. This is the message that we share with our students in terms of engagement, that student engagement is a process, and it involves them determining why they are here and what they want to accomplish or their journey, and then encouraging them to tell their story. Now, what's important about student engagement? What's important about student engagement is that research has indicated that there is a strong correlation between active student engagement and student learning outcomes. That's why student engagement is so important. I would also argue that it's difficult to create a transformative experience if students aren't actively engaged in their own learning and development. Okay, it's time to bring you into the conversation now. Sarah, if you wouldn't mind, are there any questions in the Q&A area or reactions that our audience are having?
Not yet. So we invite you all to please, if you have any comments, thoughts, questions, please post those in the Q&A feature right now. Is there anywhere, Tom, is there a link or something where we can direct people if they want more information on the Student Engagement Network?
Yes, there is. So if folks would just Google Penn State University Student Engagement Network, the link will come up and all of the information is listed there. Everything that I've talked about and what the Student Engagement Network does and the kind of services and support that they offer, students as well as faculty. Thank you, Sarah, for that question. All right.
Great, and Tim just posted that in the link in the chat.
All right, thank you, Tim. All right, so we'll have other opportunities. We'll pause and see if there are any questions, reactions. So as you're thinking about the content that I am delivering, please feel free to go to the Q&A function and document your thoughts, your reflections, and post any questions that you have. I view the world as a living laboratory for teaching. I view Penn State as a microcosm of the world. Let me give you an example of how I try to bring the world into the classroom. Early March, our professional association, the Society for Human Resource Management, partnered with the CDC to conduct a webcast on what we as a profession and we as HR practitioners can do to help employers and employees during the COVID-19 pandemic. My students watched the webcast and then joined a discussion forum where they documented what they heard from the webcast and what was important about what they heard. This is an example of bringing the world into the classroom. There are a number of themes that are interwoven into my ethics in the workplace class. One is this, that as trusted advisors and solutions providers, to leadership of organizations. We in the HR profession need to encourage organizational leaders to create an organizational culture that encourages employees to bring their best selves to work. How do we do that? Well, the culture needs to be welcoming, inclusive, fair, safe, and one that promotes, and we'll come back to this theme again and again during this talk, a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness, a sense of purpose, and a sense of community. We share with students that we have a common ecosystem that we share with different forms of life on planet Earth, and that our sustainability is dependent on our recognition that we are all interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. Another theme that's interwoven in my ethics in the workplace class is the value and importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and civil discourse. We focus on helping students to develop intercultural awareness and intercultural competencies. I want students to leverage human individuality, human differences to create a competitive advantage in the workplace. And I view civil discourse as the rules of engagement for living and working together productively and in peace. I have a number of initiatives that I'm involved with from an action research perspective. One is that I represent Penn State to the ISO, the International Standardization Organization. And I'm a member of the US delegation to Work Group 8. Our charge in Work Group 8 is to develop and publish a global HR standard for diversity and inclusion for the workplace. This is an opportunity for me to accelerate my learning in this space, to work with learned colleagues from around the world. And I view it as a duty and responsibility for me to contribute and give back. The other thing that it allows me to do is to share with my students what I'm learning and to bring the world into the classroom. To know is to do. To not do is to not know. So how does this relate to the world of work, the business world that I come from, and CEOs? PricewaterhouseCoopers conducted its 23rd annual Global CEO Survey and asked CEOs to respond to the following question. How concerned are you, if at all, about each of these potential economic, policy, social, environmental, and business threats to your organizational growth prospects? And granted, this slide is very busy, but let me just highlight a key takeaway for me as it relates to our talk this morning. Of the top 15 potential threats that keep CEOs up at night, here are 3. Cyber threats, the speed of technological change, and climate change and environmental damage. I want to make sure that my students are aware that these are the issues that keep CEOs up at night, because most of my students are seniors. The course that I teach, Ethics in the Workplace, is required, and they will be entering the workforce shortly. So it's important for them to understand context. Digital transformation in the 4th industrial revolution is no doubt a significant driver behind CEOs' concerns regarding the speed of technological change. One organization that is researching and trying to come up with solutions relative to digital transformation is the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is an international organization for public-private cooperation established in 1971. It engages leaders from government, business, academia, civil society to work together to solve the problems of the world. You may be familiar with their annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland. The Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution Network supports the work of the World Economic Forum, and it focuses on shaping the development and application of emerging technologies. I have been invited to join an initiative by the World Economic Forum to develop and publish a toolkit for C-suite executives regarding ethical and socially responsible artificial intelligence. Again, another opportunity not only to learn, to contribute, but also to bring the world to my students. I'd like to play a brief promotional video for you, produced by the World Economic Forum, that I think will bring the challenges and the potential of digital transformation to light.
The fourth industrial revolution, it's a fusion of the physical, the digital, and the biological world. It's changing not only what we are doing, it's changing who we are.
It's really the notion of digital technology pervasively impacting every walk of life in every vertical industry on all parts of the globe.
Whether it's information technology and the acceleration we see in artificial intelligence, a lot is happening.
Society and how we're going to live is being defined right now.
The speed is mind-boggling. What I'm particularly concerned about is how little the world is prepared.
Harnessing this revolution requires the involvement of all stakeholders, from public and private sectors to academia and civil society. The World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution Network ensures that the development and application of emerging technologies benefits both people and the planet. It is a network of centers for scalable impact, with locations in the United States, Japan, India, and China, bringing together stakeholders to identify the impacts of these technologies, co-design innovative governance protocols and policy frameworks, and pilot them with partners around the world.
If we are not innovative, if we're not creative enough, it will be very difficult to survive in this century.
Humans and machines are assisting each other, augmenting each other with skills.
Humanity itself will be changed with this super intelligence, and we are at the doorstep of that era.
The technologies available today will impact and change healthcare forever.
52% of the encounters with our primary care physicians were handled virtually. Just a massive change.
The network will work closely to share research, analysis, and learning, and help design new technologies in ways that respect societal values.
It's where innovation is happening, about how we guide this revolution.
We can solve the many social issues through the digital technologies.
My hope is that we have a robust discussion for how this can truly help our world solve some of the hard-pressed challenges that we have today.
Together, we can shape a future that truly benefits and empowers people.
The world has changed. We can never, ever go back to yesterday.
These are the emerging technologies that the work of the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution organizes its work around. It's interesting, I read an article yesterday. One of the things we've talked about is what separates superintelligence from human intelligence. And the article was about AEI. And one of the things we've said that separates us is emotions, feelings. AEI stands for Artificial Emotional Intelligence. Gartner Consultancy predicts that up to 10% of personal devices will have some form of artificial emotional intelligence within the next 2 years. So here are a few key takeaways for me regarding technology and artificial intelligence in particular. Artificial intelligence will enable other emerging technologies. It's deeply embedded in everyday life, and it's not going anywhere. Let me give you an example. Low-level technology. Recently, we bought a new car for me to use, my spouse and I. It was a 2020 Forester Subaru. Haven't had a new car in many years. We were at a meeting with our attorney, and I had a Zoom meeting, business meeting, that it was clear that after our meeting with our attorney, because it ran over, that I was not going to make it home in time to my home office for a Zoom meeting. So what did I do? On the dashboard of the car, I pulled up my email. I clicked on the link, the Zoom link. I connected with the Zoom meeting, and as we were driving home, fully participated in the meeting from my car. This is an example of the Internet of Things and of things to follow, especially with the rollout of 5E. So, as it relates to teaching, it is clear that artificial intelligence is transformative and it's disruptive. And I think it's up to us as faculty members to be digital leaders and to adopt a digital mindset. What if we could use machine learning to identify student learning patterns and challenges that they're facing over multiple semesters, and then we could tweak our course and assignments by looking at the patterns and applying some insight. This screen identifies a number of potential benefits as well as potential perils of digital transformation. Now, as an ethicist, I am very concerned about the potential harm to society and humanity, as well as the potential benefits. And the approach that I think we can take is to think about how superintelligence and human beings, how we can work together in a complementary fashion, and what that might look like. In other words, what tasks from a teaching and learning perspective are most appropriate for faculty, and what tasks would be most appropriate for superintelligence? What's an example of that? Well, an example of that is, what if we could create a faculty avatar that could serve a frequently asked question function for students, available 24/7. And based on the questions that students ask, we could use that information to enhance our teaching and our teaching practices. Would that be of value? Okay, another opportunity to engage you in the conversation. Sarah, do we have any questions, comments, reactions to anything thus far?
We do. So Marilyn commented a thank you, and Sharon commented, what are some tangible action steps to help students have a transformative understanding of what they can do to help us move forward from our current institutional inequities in the context of student engagement?
So I'm going to get to that, but let me try to touch on it right here. One of the things that I try to do in my class is to promote self-reflection, self-discovery, and self-knowledge. And we focus on the concept of the greater good. Those two things in combination, I think, gets to that question. In other words, I want students to think and to learn, and I create my coursework that you will see in a little bit that encourage them to self-reflect and to connect what they are learning to the greater good. So I think that's how we do it, and I'm going to get into more detail about that in a very concrete way in just a couple of slides. Other questions, Sarah?
Yes. So Beth asks, as you work to engage students and create transformative experiences, do you employ different methods and strategies in your online teaching versus in-person and hybrid classrooms?
So it's interesting. I'm going to talk about specific techniques, but I think this boundary that we have between online and face-to-face is an artificial boundary. In my mind, there is teaching and learning. And the question is, what tools are in the best position to promote learning? We call this a multimodal approach to teaching and learning. So my class, Ethics in the Workplace, is a hybrid class. It's a blended class. You would think, and students have said, that their view is that they're taking an online class. Well, they are. The purpose of getting together face-to-face is that social engagement, human interaction, that, from my viewpoint, is the primary benefit of face-to-face. And I'm going to talk about this in a few slides, but I think we need to reimagine the role of higher education in society and teaching and learning. And we need to use all of the tools that are available for us. Let me give you an example. I'm on a committee for our school where we are exploring developing an online applied doctoral program. And one of the things that I'm pushing is this can be online courses, but I'd like for there to be a residential component. Why? Well, because my experience is that if we get students in a cohort together at the beginning of the class, they can bond, they can interact, and they can help one another throughout the duration of the course. And then it might be a great idea at the end of the course to bring them together again. Now, this is for an online program and an online course. Why can't we combine online with in-person? Why do we have to separate? Why not? Why can't they be complementary? Okay, Sarah, I'm going to move on because I want to make sure we get through all the content, but there will be one more break where I'll be happy to respond to questions. Those are great questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for your engagement. But let me finish the content. So this is the teaching and learning framework that I have developed to promote student engagement and engage scholarship and to leverage technology. I want to touch on these and some of the practices that I employ in my Ethics in the Workplace class. If you're teaching ethics, I would argue that you need to be talking about values. I employ a value-driven approach to teaching ethics in the workplace. These are the values and principles and concepts that I've adopted. Why? Well, they reflect who I am as a human being. And they reflect how I want to show up for my students in my class as a role model. Let me touch on each of these. Inclusion, excellence. This involves designing a teaching and learning environment that is welcoming and creates, and this should be familiar to you, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness, and a sense of a learning community. Educating the whole person. This involves cultivation of the health and well-being of the whole student, cognitive, emotional, and mind-body connections. Cura personalis. This is a concept I learned at Georgetown. This is compassion of self and others, and service to the greater good. This goes back to the question. We need to emphasize to our students that we are not on this planet by ourselves, that what we do interacts with and impacts others, and that beyond individual needs and wants, there is this concept called the greater good. And contemplation in action. Lifelong love of reflection, learning, and practice. I think we're starting to get to some of the content raised by audience members with respect to their questions. These are the guiding teaching principles that I employ. What I'm trying to accomplish, what I endeavor to do, is to create an authentic and memorable transformative learning experience for students. How do I do this? I do this by trying to promote a collaborative, co-learning, inclusive learning environment based on mutual trust and civil discourse. I adapt my teaching style to the varied learning styles of students. Also, I embed active and experiential learning methods, and I'll give you some examples of that in a minute. The one practice that I'm really excited about, I'm interested in the science and the evidence behind mindfulness practices, such as headspace and calm. The purpose is, wouldn't it be great if faculty members were trained to pause right before the beginning of class, engage students in mindfulness practices to help them focus and be present and prepare to learn during that time that we spend together. I'm very excited and very interested in learning more about mindfulness applications. This is my ethics in workplace class. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see the three interrelated themes that we focus on in the class. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will see the different levels of analysis that we engage in those three areas. One of the issues that we do a deep dive on in my class is ethical and socially responsible AI. We use a stakeholder theory approach and we utilize select ethical principles to help students examine and figure out how to recognize and resolve ethical dilemmas in the workplace. I'm a huge fan of technology and leveraging technology to promote student engagement. I use technology specifically to promote self-reflection, self-awareness, and self-discovery by students. I leverage to the maximum extent possible our learning management system, Canvas, including class announcements, standalone learning modules with learning objectives, and a lesson commentary where I can provide context and my insights, reading and activity assignments, including links to websites such as TED Talks, which I love, and lesson assessments. More on lesson assessments in a minute. We link directly from my class to Harvard Business Review articles and online simulations. We link directly from my class to ethics games, ethicsgames.com, where they have online simulations, expert agents, and ethical lens inventory, where students learn about their primary and secondary lenses that they use to view ethical dilemmas. And we have a class blog powered by sites in WordPress, where students document their critical reflections in response to our guest speakers that we have during the semester. We have online discussion forums that give students an opportunity to promote giving voice to values, their values, and promote 360-degree learning. I mentioned that I use active learning strategies, techniques, and practices during our face-to-face classes. Some examples of that would be small group discussions and readouts, role-playing, structured debates, and storytelling. And storytelling provides an opportunity to share with students my experiences. And it goes something like this. Let me share a story with you. That's usually how I introduce it. The picture on the left is an example of experiential learning. During this week of class, we were talking about diversity, ethics, equity, inclusion, and civil discourse in the workplace. And what I did to augment what students were learning is that I invited this group that you see playing instruments, the Sphinx Virtuosi, a renowned chamber orchestra group comprised of 18 Black and Latinx classical musicians, to come to class, to play a number of pieces, and then they put their instruments down and engage with my students about the challenges that they face as classical musicians of color in the workplace. Based on comments from my students at the class blog, they found this experience to be mesmerizing. There were classes next to mine where students left the classes and came out and sat in the hallway and listened to this group play. This is an example of experiential learning, and I take advantage of every opportunity to do that. On the right-hand side, you see a picture of my class with Dr. Barron. We were fortunate to have Dr. Barron come to my class and talk about ethical leadership for a couple of years. And I expose my students to accomplished thought leaders, Dr. Barron being one and David Gray here being another from this past semester. These sessions are positioned with the speakers as unplugged. They're conversations on ethical leadership. I do not allow PowerPoint presentations. My students drive the conversation with their questions based on their research. During the spring semester, most of our guest speakers, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we conducted via Zoom. What was interesting about that is I actually had greater student engagement with the online sessions, with the Zoom sessions, than I have experienced in the past with the face-to-face sessions. I love this quote by David Gray. It speaks to the issue that CEOs referenced earlier about the change of technological change, the speed of change. I'm going to read this because it is so powerful. When you see a wave coming at you, you can either get your surfboard out and ride it or prepare to get pounded. So here are some methods that I use to assess students. We have the lesson assessment, which I'll chat about in just a minute. Group assignments. We use our class blog. 20% of their grade is determined by their contribution to the class, be it questions for guest speakers, speaking up in class. What did you do to ensure that this class was successful? I take class attendance on an announced and unannounced basis. And in lieu of a final exam, students are engaged in a semester-long, what I call engaged scholarship project. So they partner with members from the community and members from campus on a real-world business challenge that they're facing. The students are responsible for researching it, coming up with solutions, and providing recommendations. 20% of their final grade, and they work on it throughout the entire semester. Some of the campus partners in the past have been the Office of Human Resources, the Sustainability Institute, Center for the Performing Arts, the Office of Finance and Business, and Shavers Creek. In terms of the community, we've partnered with the Borough of State College, Office of HR, Clearwater Conservancy, and the Society for Human Resource Management Southeastern Pennsylvania chapter, and the Philadelphia chapter. Semester-long projects, wonderful experience, engaged scholarship out of classroom learning. Now, with respect to lesson assessments, which I've alluded to a couple of times now, I have replaced traditional quizzes and exams with reflective lesson assessments. And they're structured this way. In 300 words or less, based on everything that you read, videos that you've viewed for the lesson this week, what are the key takeaway points? In 700 words or less, this is the second part, designed to promote self-reflection. What did you learn about yourself? What's important about what you learned? And what are you going to do with what you learned? Lesson assessments have replaced quizzes and exams because I'm trying to promote self-reflection, self-knowledge, self-discovery, self-management. So, what have I learned from this approach to teaching and learning? Probably the first thing is that all students don't like this approach. Some students prefer the traditional way of teaching and learning. The traditional way of being assessed, that is quizzes, exams, midterms, and finals. Some of this, I think, is based on that's what they're used to. They've learned how to master that process. This is different. But I would say most students love this approach to learning. Here are some specific key takeaways and insights that I've gathered from the years of teaching this way. You have high student engagement when the following conditions exist. When the subject matter is viewed as relevant and applicable to their future. I call this direct line of sight, where the subject matter is presented in an interesting manner. Technology can be leveraged to help present subject matter in an interesting manner, where students have a choice and freedom and the opportunity to express their unique human nature, thoughts, ideas, and perspective. This plays into why I have elected to have lesson assessments instead of traditional quizzes and exams where you're expecting a specific answer. Where the teaching and learning environment is viewed as welcoming, respectful, inclusive, and fair. Where the faculty member is engaged, accessible, and accommodates all learning styles. And of course, leveraging technology can be an effective enabler for promoting student engagement and engaged scholarship. In the time that we have left, I'd like to share with you a few thoughts about the classroom of the future, a few observations. As my colleagues have discussed, perhaps the classroom of the future won't be a classroom. Perhaps it will be a learning space and not a learning place. I believe that the COVID-19 pandemic gives us an opportunity to engage in possibility thinking, to reimagine and reinvent teaching and learning. Some of my colleagues talk about this concept of creating AI-resistant educational programs, and specifically they're talking about in-person classes. And so to promote in-person classes, the gold standard for teaching and learning in higher ed in the United States, they suggest that we need to focus on face-to-face interactions to promote critical soft skills like creativity, judgment, perspective, social human interaction, and my colleagues argue emotional intelligence. But a little bit ago, I mentioned to you about Gartner saying that artificial emotional intelligence is coming. I think we need to become digital leaders and demonstrate digital leadership and digital mindset. We need to become more nimble, flexible, and adaptable. Let's get rid of the artificial barrier between online education and in residence. Why can't they be combined? We need to partner, continue to partner with third-party solution providers, including Canvas, Zoom, Box, and others, to push the envelope regarding what is possible in this space. This slide identifies some of the questions that I think would encourage us to engage in possibility thinking. Thinking about how to reimagine teaching and learning. Okay, Sarah, what do you got?
Okay, so we have a couple questions that have been upvoted, meaning multiple people have those questions. So one was, how do you suggest we get students to bring their entire selves to the classroom appropriately?
Well, my experience is that students bring their entire selves when they are respected, they are accepted for who they are, that they can have the opportunity to express themselves. These are it's really, if we think about context of where we are as a country, which I spoke about in the beginning, it's the same issue. People want to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness, that I'm here for a reason, that line of sight, this is relevant information. So I think that's what we need. It's a feeling, it is a culture that people are accepted and appreciated and respected for who they are, and that we as faculty are truly interested in what they have to say, and that we respect their unique human differences. Sarah, other questions?
Yes. Thank you, Tom. Another question was, can you share the link for the simulations for ethical dilemmas?
So what I can share, and perhaps Tim can do this on a real-time basis, if you go, Tim, to ethicsgame.com, that is the company that we partner with, and I've been doing this for a number of years. They have a number of teaching tools available, including simulations, and we leverage their services in my class. So Tim, if you could do that, ethicsgame.com, and put that in chat for folks, that's probably the fastest way, Sarah, to do that. Which, by the way, I also employ simulations provided by the Harvard Business Review Publishing Group for educators. So maximize the use of online simulations. And I'm a huge fan of gaming. Even though I'm not a gamer, I think gamification is another tool we can use to promote student engagement. Okay, Sarah.
How have you addressed, or what have you considered regarding the challenge of the students that don't like this new approach?
That's an interesting question. To some extent, I just have to accept that. That's not something I can change. This is a different, whenever you introduce something that's new and different, you're going to have resistance. And quite frankly, people learn differently. So perhaps for that student, the more traditional approach to teaching and learning facilitates learning for them. And perhaps that is most appropriate. But given my interests in who I am and my philosophy, this is the path that I've chosen. It is a choice. I believe it is the future. Okay, Sarah.
Great. Sorry. Another comment was, I like the idea of the assessment techniques replacing quizzes and exams. Would it be possible to grade without teaching assistance?
Would it be possible to grade without teaching assistance? Well, I will tell you that it is intensive. This is not a large class. The maximum number of students for me is 40. I believe a TA could, if trained, could grade these lesson assessments and do a good job. So I don't think that's an obstacle, but it is time intensive because I need to be engaged. From a diversity perspective, I need to appreciate the fact that if I give Tim and Sarah something to read and ask them to view a TED Talk and ask them what did they learn, what's important about what they learned, and what are they going to do with what they learned, there isn't a right or wrong answer. Their background, their experiences, their unique human nature will determine what they got from the reading assignments and the TED Talk. This is, when we talk about valuing diversity and inclusion, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about respecting that the lens that people view and interpret reality is unique to them and is conditioned by what they've experienced and their background. That is why I got rid of quizzes and exams as a champion of diversity and inclusion and equity. Now, will this approach work for all academic disciplines? Probably not. But remember, I'm teaching ethics in the workplace. This approach to teaching and learning is customized to teaching students how to recognize and reconcile ethical dilemmas in the workplace. Frequently, there is no black, white, on, off, or what I call binary thinking solution to reconciling ethical dilemmas. Hence, that's why I developed this approach to teaching and learning.
Thank you so much, Tom. I think that's all the time we have for today. But we greatly appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing ways to create transformative experiences and promote engagement for our students. We want to thank all of our presenters today for adapting their presentations for this online format and for providing ways to transform teaching and enhance the learning for all of our Penn State students. And lastly, thank you to all of our audience members again for taking time to join us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you all at our next session.